I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Hi, I'm Luke Ryan for JoBlo.com and welcome to Movie Endings Explained. In this episode we're going to be looking at the hugely successful and sometimes controversial 2019 Oscar-winning comic book movie, Joker. Born out of director Todd Phillips' interest in creating a realistic and grounded take on the origin of the clown prince of crime, Joker follows Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, as he slowly transforms into the character we know as the Joker. Arthur Fleck is a lonely and mentally disturbed man who begins the movie dressed as a garish clown where he is harassed and beaten up by a group of young thugs, and ends the movie as the unintentional anarchist leader of a revolution. Far removed from every iteration of the Joker character, who is usually defined by his villainous role opposite the rogue hero Batman, Arthur Fleck presents us with a more human and complicated Joker than we've ever seen before. Living alone with his mother, visiting a counselor, and trying to make it as a stand-up comedian, Arthur is presented in a completely sympathetic light to begin with. Held back in society by a condition which forces him to laugh uncontrollably in uncomfortable situations, Arthur is an isolated and detached man who frequently indulges in daydreams that extend from simply imagining a talk show host as the father figure he never had, to an entire fantasy in which he romances a neighbor. We eventually learn that the majority of his interactions with her have been entirely inside his head. His grip on reality really starts to take a downward spiral when he's harassed again on the subway and ends up killing 3 men. In his mind and world, it's an act that frees him, and he continues to murder the people who have wronged him, succumbing further into a persona that boosts his confidence and furthers his self-liberation. After being invited to be a guest on the Murray Franklin show after they play a clip from his disastrous stand-up comedy set, Arthur decides to make a statement in killing himself live on air. We see him planning this act in his living room before the show, and also miming it in the dressing room. But when the time comes for Arthur to take the stage, he switches gears, once again murdering a man he believes has wronged him, shooting Murray Franklin live on air. Now the transformation from Arthur Fleck to Joker is complete, and he revels in the madness that he has created when he's taken away from the show by the police. His killing of the men on the subway, who were up-and-coming Wall Street elites, has been taken as a statement against the rich, and a movement has been growing throughout the movie in the public. Revealing himself as the subway killer and wreaking chaos on the Murray Franklin show solidifies Arthur as the public figurehead of the mayhem. His new followers rescue him from the police, and Arthur takes his place among the crowd, embracing the madness and the name that Murray Franklin first gave him when they mocked his stand-up set.
Check out this Joker.
Can you introduce me as Joker? That's what you called me on the show. A Joker.
Joker it is. It's good.
Thanks, Murray.
And the Joker is born. You wouldn't have been surprised to see the credits roll here, but a laugh rings out, and a final scene begins to play. Arthur is now in Arkham Asylum, seemingly reflecting on his story. The final shot follows him leaving the room, his feet leaving bloody footprints, and he dances his way down the hallway to Frank Sinatra. As the orderlies chase him out of view at the end of the hallway, the title card reads "The End," and we leave Arthur Fleck's story behind. So, what's to explain? Well, in the case of this film, and many others that have come before in this series, there really isn't a cast iron explanation for what the ending means or represents, but I'll do my best to dig into some possibilities as always. At face value, we follow Arthur's descent into madness, his transition into the Joker, in a series of events that very much frame him as the hero of his own story. This killer is presented triumphantly at the end, assuming his place as a true villain. but every step of the way we are given reasons to either sympathize with Arthur, or to empathize with Arthur, or even to pity Arthur. You can view him as a person who has always been bad, and that his mental health issues are no excuse for his horrific actions, or you can view him as a broken man who was abused since a child, terrorized and neglected by an unstable mother who is constantly pushed away and abandoned by society, who unfortunately snaps under all the pressure. Or you can view him as all of those things, and the shades of Arthur Fleck become more grey than black and white. The key though is the final scene. The way it's presented very much feels like it's signposting the entire movie as being told through Arthur's perspective to the counselor in Arkham Asylum. We've already been subject to two of Arthur's fantasies before, in the Murray Franklin daydream and the fabrication of a romance with his neighbour. So what's real and what isn't? When we see Arthur dance down the steps, the cigarette in his mouth reappears after he's already flicked it away. Is that a continuity mistake? Or is that a sign that he's making up and embellishing this story as he goes along? The dance sequence is a set routine that we see play out once, and then we see the same moves play out again in slow motion from different camera angles. In the second section, the two police officers appear at the top of the stairs. In the beginning of the dance though, they're not there at all. During the very same dance steps we see play out a second time. Perhaps they're only appearing at the top of those stairs when Arthur decides to place them there in his telling of his journey to Arkham Asylum. Throughout the film there is a mystery around Arthur's parentage, an idea that his father is Thomas Wayne, who his mother Penny worked for many years ago. Arthur tracks down his mother's records from Arkham Asylum which show that Penny actually adopted Arthur. She maintains, though, that that's not true, and that the immensely powerful Thomas Wayne fabricated the adoption papers to keep his name clean. Arthur later finds a photo with a note on the back from Thomas Wayne to his mother, but given Penny's fragile mental state, it's hard to know which version of the story to believe, or more importantly, which version Arthur believes. He ends up trying to meet Thomas Wayne and has a brief interaction with a young Bruce Wayne, which is as bizarre as it is tragic. Could the Joker and Batman's origins in this world both be created from the ashes of their father's death, and that father is the same man, let alone the fact that the Joker and Batman in this world could potentially be half-brothers, two sides of the same coin, destined to be joined together forever. Upon finally meeting Thomas Wayne, Arthur is met with coldness and contempt. This all contributes to Arthur's inner implosion, but also, if this is all a tale being spun by Arthur in Arkham Asylum, it could easily be an invention designed to draw pity and or sympathy, as could every element that portrays Arthur as a victim and not a villain. But at the same time, when we see Arthur in Arkham Asylum at the end of the movie, he is not a man trying to convince someone that he was wronged to defend his own morality. He is unhinged and manic, he's barely even looking at the counselor, so maybe this version of events he's been telling is for his own peace of mind, much like the idea that his childhood abuse, the neglect and head trauma he was subjected to were completely repressed inside his mind. He's shocked to learn these things about his early life. Maybe he has already gone through this process before, sitting down and telling an alternate version of his life, suppressing the horror and painting himself as the hero. But at this point, does Arthur even know what a hero or a good person is supposed to be and look like and act? Another idea is that this all happened exactly as Arthur tells it, his own self-recognized daydreams and fantasies included, but that this version of the Joker is not the Joker who would go on to be Batman's most ardent adversary, but the man and the symbol who inspires the Joker. After all, the movie is simply titled Joker, and not the Joker. And Bruce Wayne is so young that by the time he becomes Batman, Arthur will be fairly old. And Arthur Fleck, as presented in Joker, bears no resemblance to the character who masterminds crime and gleefully creates chaos. Arthur is at times frail, weedy, cowardly, but there is a simmering strength and brewing darkness within him. He only kills the people he believes have wronged him in some way. There is almost a logic to his actions, but absolutely zero intent in antagonizing or hurting anyone innocent, or even in becoming a crime lord. He embraces his status at the end, not to fulfill his desire to become a villain, but to absorb an identity in which he is seen by people. It's a different kind of villain from the Joker we already know. The director Todd Phillips has touched on this theory that Arthur isn't the true Joker, but the inspiration for what would come later.
There's many ways to look at the movie. He might not be Joker. This is just a version of a Joker origin. It's the version this guy is telling in this room at a mental institution. I don't know that he's the most reliable narrator in the world. You know what I'm saying?
However, Joaquin Phoenix, who won the Oscar for his incredible performance, has stated he believes Arthur is the real Joker, but that is just his opinion. Todd Phillips similarly has been non-committal about what the ending really means, merely stating that there are many ways to interpret it, that he has his own idea of what they were trying to tell with the movie, but that he won't reveal it anytime soon. Then there is the clock theory. When we see clocks throughout the film, they all read 11 minutes past 11, from his first meeting with a counselor, with a brief cutaway to Arkham, presumably before the events of the movie, where the clocks show the exact same time. This could be a clue that everything we're seeing is a flashback or a story being concocted by Arthur, but we also see the same 11 past 11 time on the clock he punches out at his job. Todd Phillips has stated that the clocks are interesting, but entirely and completely coincidental, not intentional in the slightest. I really don't think I buy that, especially when, in the King James Bible, chapter and verse 11:11 reads, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape, and though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." Seems pretty fitting, right? But at the same time, I will completely admit that conjecture can get you very far if you really push it. I still think the clocks are intentional though. As the chaos erupts at the end after Joker kills Murray, we see the Wayne family get cornered and killed down a dark alley. At this point in the story, Arthur has killed his own mother, and we cut between a young Bruce Wayne, in the moment that his life changes forever, and Arthur Fleck, when he finally accepts the mantle of being Joker. When we see Arthur laughing in Arkham at the end though, he mentions that he's thinking of a joke, and we see Bruce Wayne standing over his dead parents. This image seems to set Arthur off laughing even more. On one hand, he wasn't aware of this murder in the moment, which supports the idea that he's making it all up, or at least embellishing heavily. But also, it's highly likely that he would have heard the news of the Waynes being murdered before he was taken to Arkham, and is imagining this scene, finding a horrible humour in how his potential half-brother is now too an orphan. The suggestion that he kills the counselor off-screen at the end from his bloody footprints also makes a change in that it's the only character he kills who presumably has not wronged him in any way. Maybe his justified version of events where the people he killed in his mind deserved it are warped. Maybe his co-worker never gave him that gun, but Arthur decides he did to justify brutally killing him. At the end of the day, all I can think of is the classic Joker story, The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, and how that version of the character states if he's going to have a backstory, he'd prefer it to be multiple choice. This was an idea that Christopher Nolan toyed around with in his iteration of the Joker played by Heath Ledger, another Oscar-winning performance, by having him tell people different versions of his backstory throughout the film. I prefer to view Joker a bit more straightforward, that we see an essentially true version of the story with perhaps a few adjustments from our most unreliable of narrators, Arthur Fleck. Ultimately though, the final scene is emblematic of the uncertain journey we've taken. Joker dances down a brightly lit hallway, a complete contrast to the dark and disturbing story we've just witnessed, and Joker embraces that contrast gleefully, eventually running away from the orderlies of Arkham Asylum. Just like any semblance of truly figuring out what's reality and what's fiction we as an audience might have in this story, Joker slips through their fingers, evading capture. And perhaps the joke is on us.